we've heard a lot information about data, what do we need for the patients, and how IT can really innovate the health sector. I would not like to spoil the stuff, but we need to think also about cybersecurity and trust. So in case I'm going to think about discussion, innovation from data, I'm, as a patient, would like also to have secure data about me. And the data is not used against me for whatever reason. Why I'm saying this? Because my name, I would like to introduce myself, is Gabi Dreo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Research Center Code for Cybersecurity, one of the largest one in Europe. And we see that the health sector is one of the hottest sector beside finance, where cybercrime and cyber attackers are going towards. And before going to present my panel, I would like to give you, to setting a scene, to give you an indication. Where are we? What do we have to do? And why should we talk about cybersecurity, especially in the health sector? To give you an idea, we are living, of course, in a smart virtual world, and we have something like 50 billion of connected devices by 2020. And we set a lot of data. But from the IT perspective, and I'm from computer science, I can give you data to say we have 163 of zettabyte of data until 2025. So no one can imagine what a zettabyte is. That's a number with 21 zeros behind. 1 zettabyte are all sand corns in the world. Why? And we have already some of them. And if you see what happens in 60 seconds in the internet, that you see that, for example, 500 hours of video are uploaded into YouTube, 1 minute. Then you see how much data we have, structured, unstructured. And the point is, do I trust the data? And of course, what can I do with it? And the systems become smarter and autonomous, which means they cannot drive, like here, an autonomous car by themselves, but also from the other various areas we have here. So everything is connected, everything is smart, everything is exchanging data from cars, from Internet of Things, and so on. And of course, IT is something we use for innovation. There are the digital nuggets that we are looking for in the big data to get from big to smart. But on the other side, we have also to think about not only the good guys, but the bad guys, which means the hackers, they want to get to the data. And the e-health area is especially interesting for the cybercrime people, because all these medical devices are mostly used or implemented on old operating systems, because they are certified. And if you have a medical scanner which is certified from an operating system, then you have to think about to upload or to update the operating systems and to lose the certification, or vice versa. And we see here the hacks, for example, in German, that you can hack, for example, an insulin pump, or for example, a pacemaker who is communicating unencrypted with a remote control. So what do I have to do? I just have to press a button to kill the person. So why is this? This is therefore because we are experiencing a paradigm shift here in our society. Our digital society depends everything on one technology, and this is the ICT. The information and communication technology is the key technology. And we see, especially from several sectors, healthcare, that this area are not sufficiently protected. We have to think, in the previous papers it was said, first biology, second IT. I would disagree with this. You have to do it in parallel. Because if you don't consider IT as the basis the ICT, then you have a problem. You have vulnerabilities, you have cyber risk, and you have not protected your assets. And there are several cyber attacks, just to give you an impression from, for example, Stuxnet in 2010, where there was an attack on the Iranian plant infrastructure, very complicated, very sophisticated, exploiting 0 days, such vulnerabilities which are not known. And this is continuing. We will talk about not only APT28, which was the worm attacked by the Bundestag, or where the Bundestag was attacked by this attack, but also about WannaCry later in the discussion, and Petya, not Petya. So from CryptoLogger with erasers, so which means they destroy the hardware. IT is developing even further. We are in the area of Internet of Things. So we will not see the IT anymore. We see now the laptop and Apple Watch, but actually we are in the area of an ambient internet. The IT is around us, we don't see it, and the IT is supporting us. Everything goes mobile ecom systems, so all applications go on the smartphones, like payment, ticketing, locations, and the wearables in the health sector are tracking my pulse, how do I walk, how much steps do I do, and so on. So everything is collected here. And I have my dresses where the IT is in my dress, monitoring my heart, monitoring my pressure, and so on. And everything communicating to mobile devices and to the cloud. And I also say here, perfect point. Cloud systems are absolutely ideal. The problem is, where is the data? Is the data in the Amazon cloud, is it Microsoft Azure, or where is it? And we know that we have Patriot Acts where some Western countries can go to the data without you ever knowing. So in Europe we have to have, and this GDPR are very good, but we have to see what clouds to use and how. From big to smart, I always said, everything is collected, and especially in the smart health care, we have everything. From wearables, monitoring our health status, even to tablets where you can eat it and then it's reporting, have you take your medicine or not. Privacy issues, is there a big issue there for me? And of course, if you say big and smart, there's a between, there are algorithms, there's analytics. So, do I trust my raw data? Do I have structured, unstructured data? What analytics do I have? Saying me, okay, you are perfectly well, but on the other side, do I trust the analytics there? Only if this is transparent. And it happened from issues to say what has happened, what will happen, what should we do. So these are the gold nuggets we are looking in the data for innovate. And the point is there is a lot of work going on in this area. Digital identities also, do we know who are standing here? Maybe I'm not Gabi Dreo saying, I'm just pretending I am. In the internet, I can do this very good. It depends on my skills. And in fact, we should also not just cure such point, but really, for example, with username, password, but really to do something more. Because we need, for example, for each stuff, you need username, password. And I don't think you remember all the passwords, but there's a good solution there, password managers. So one password where all the passwords are stored behind. And we are not at the end, we are even starting blockchain. Yeah, blockchain is the new hype. And if I say you that internet as we know it here originated from ARPANET, which was built 1968. 1968, 4 centers, 4 universities were connected. And from ARPANET now, 2007, evolved such an interconnected world. And the blockchain has the capability, not just for the Bitcoins, this is also an application for this technology, to be the next big game changer. And of course, you see here a nice picture, quantum computing is on the way. So not our old stuff, but to say that we can really use quantum cryptography. The problem, if a universal computer is coming there, then we have to rethink all our encryption, the asymmetric encryption. So, and the cyber attacks are developing as well, especially the one which we don't know they are there. They are the dangerous one. A company, it's a statistic, the companies recognize that there is a problem, that they had been attacked 200 days in average. So 200 days they don't know that they have been hacked and there's somebody that was in their systems. And this is really concerning, especially if they are going for our data, they want to have them. So and these smart attacks are especially interested from that we need to detect them, to prevent them, and really to react. And if I say you that 2016, more than 60 million patient records were stolen from the healthcare organization in the US and related parties. And in 2017, healthcare was the 5th most targeted industry when it came to cyber attacks, then I think we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. What are the challenges we have to face and how we need not just innovate, use the data, but I said innovate in a trustworthy way. And so this will be also the discussion with my panel. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Christoph Bauer. I'm founder and CEO of ePrivacy. We are a company specializing on data protection and data security for digital products. So we also look at e-health, but it's not the only digital technology we look at. So we audit these technologies, and then these technologies can get a certificate, a seal, for good compliance with data protection requirements and with the very high security standards. We are working for around 200 companies. You see that here on the top left. And on e-health, we are working for smaller, medium-sized, and for larger companies who already have some applications in e-health. You see here on the right that we have inspected around almost 1,000 apps over the last years. About 1.5 years ago, we started a study about 130 medical apps, just with medical data. And, well, it's even difficult sometimes to define what is really medical data. When you look at e-health, the definition of data is very broad. So even the data from fitness apps, from fitness trackers is included, although you may not even have logged in with your original name, but maybe with a pseudonym, with like Max Meyer or something like that, so nobody can really detect who you are, but still this is seen as e-health data, so requirements are very high. When we conducted this study about 130 apps for medical data, we found a lot of things which have to be improved. And when you look at the law, what are the law requirements, you find, I just listed here, 10 different acts in Germany, but also European requirements. Just from the law side, there are very high requirements for e-health data and even more specialized medical data. They are all sensitive data, so very high legal requirements, but also very high technical requirements, which are sometimes difficult to find. So when we studied about these 130 apps, we found that more than 70% of the apps didn't fulfill simple requirements, like including a data privacy policy, tell the users about what they do, and more than 50% of the apps were hackable, easily hackable, and we could, from these 50%, for about like 40%, find out even the data, so directly read out the data. So massive topics around that. The difficulty on the data security is that, well, compared to the law, there are not that many written standards how you have to do that. There's a status of technology which one has to fulfill, but that's sometimes difficult to find, especially for e-health applications. So here you see a list on requirements companies have to fulfill when they operate with health data. So, well, you need to be clear about the consent. Well, a lot of companies do not really clarify the consent which has been given by the user. You have some information duties you need to be fulfilled, like the privacy policy. You need to state that. So there are some legal things here, but like starting with number 6 and 7, there are also technical requirements. So you need to make sure that you look at the risk. What is the risk of your application? That's this point number 6. You have to conduct a so-called privacy impact assessment. So what is the risk of your application to consumers? And if the risk is higher, which is, well, always the case with health data, you have to fulfill higher requirements of security. You have to look at technical organizational measures. So what are your concrete measures to make sure that your application is not hackable? So some simple examples here I gave, like two-factor authentication. If you are using concrete medical data and a user can be identified with that data, so if you use social security numbers or the clear name of the user or other detectors with which a person can be really detected, well, then you have to use a two-factor authentication. Pseudonymization is another mean to make data more secure. So with that, you, for example, hash the data so a third person cannot easily detect the person behind that. And I listed some other here, 8, 9, and 10, some other requirements from data security. So very high requirements, but we see from what we've worked on that there's a very low fulfillment of industry until now. And that's a real problem. And I think we will see more crises, as you mentioned before, where viruses or other people will hack applications. We offer online tools so that people can look at how to fulfill the data protection and data security requirements. So one can look at that and get a first view on what kind of security requirements have to be fulfilled. We also decided half a year ago to write a book about the requirements on data protection and data security, especially for e-health companies. It's a German book. It's here translated into English. It's a German book. Will be released 3rd of December, so just a few weeks. E-health, Datenschutz und Datensicherheit. So how to really implement data security and data protection for e-health applications. Yeah, we are happy to get further questions, but maybe later on we have some time for that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Timo Baumann. He is since 2011 VP, Head of Business Development at Telekom Healthcare Solutions, expert of, what I heard, expert in hospital IT with passion.
Oh yes,
with
I
passion.
Am.
Okay, so looking forward to your inputs.
Yeah, thank you very much for your introduction. Yes, so my name is Timo Baumann. A very warm welcome from my side too to this afternoon round. I'm with Telekom Healthcare Solutions. We are our main product, so to say, our flagship product is our hospital information system for small and medium-sized acute treatment hospitals. That's our main target group. So the perspective I want to share with you this afternoon are derived from that background. So as the headline of this panel already suggests, cybersecurity doesn't come alone, of course. So I would like to start with a little bit of position fixing here in my presentation. And I want to start with the subject of digitalization, because very obviously, only if you have digital devices, then you have attack surfaces. So where are we in digitalization of healthcare? So I brought some recent newspaper articles just to get some highlights here. I will read some of them to you as there may be some international attendance. So very provocative statement on the top, which says that digitalization has not arrived in healthcare yet. Other statements are we are 5 years behind other industries like automotive, for example, in terms of adoption of IT in the industry. Then there is the demand for funding, especially public funding for digitalization. So I think this shows to some extent a lot of insecurity in healthcare in regards of digitalization. So do we need to worry about cybersecurity at all? Isn't this just some sort of trend, which is perfectly fine for trade fairs like this one, so you can talk about it, but is there a need to talk about it? Yes, I think so, because digitalization will take place also in those in the area of the market of the small and medium enterprises in healthcare that I come from, because digitalization is not necessarily an app that we heard about just before by Mr. Bauer. It's not necessarily a some sophisticated telemedical application, teleradiology, you name it. I think digitalization will take place also in the everyday business processes. Let's take, for example, a paper form. Of course, there is no use in putting a paper form on a computer screen. Typically, this will make things worse. But usually, there is a business need, a use case behind the idea of having IT for a form to fill out. Perhaps it's the idea of I don't want to re-enter my medical data, like for anamnesis, for example, several times. So then the use case and the demand is, from a business perspective, how can I reuse data? And then it's not about computerizing a paper form, but then it's about how to enter, where to enter, who enters data, and how to integrate the data neatly for example, in a computer-based form, and to make use of it. And I think this is the core of digitalization, and that's where it should start and where it will grow. And perhaps you have come about the topic of ambidexterity in that context. Who of you knows what ambidexterity means? Medical term? Yeah, great. So for the rest of this round, it means more or less walking with both hands. So one hand represents the traditional way of doing business, brick and mortar like, and the other hand represents the new digital ways. And the idea behind digitalization, I think, is it's not saying that the old way is wrong or bad. It's just about starting to work also with the means of digital technology so they can coexist. And because we should do that, and we will do that, the attack surfaces will increase. And I think there are some points that are very important in that respect. So first of all, I think we need more awareness that already today the IT in healthcare is already attackable because it's there. I personally think there are very few, very direct attacks where somebody says, okay, I want to steal health records, for example, or I want to get some money from this or that healthcare institution. That may happen, but typically cyber incidents just happen because you're attackable, because you have internet access, you receive emails with malware attachments, and so on. Second, I think it's very important to understand what's new about cyber attacks. And I try to depict this on this slide here. So it's no longer only about detecting some malware via means of a firewall or virus scanner. The new threats mainly derived from the so-called zero-day exploits. So there are some backdoors or weak spots in your infrastructure, IT infrastructure, that you are not aware of. And the idea behind those advanced persistent threats is to exploit just these unknown security flaws. What does that mean? And we already heard that in the introduction by Professor Dreo. Typically, you will not be aware that you have a security incident for a very, very long time. There are, of course, a lot of numbers. I think Mrs. Dreo gave the number of 200 days that it takes until, on average, here's another range from 100 days to 400 days or so. But that's a very, very long time, unless you really realize you have been attacked or hacked. So what does that mean? It means we need to rebalance the idea of how to protect against cyber attacks or crime. It's no longer only about prevention, it also means we need to focus on detecting and reacting. And for that purpose, it's clear that we also need new security tools. The virus scanners and the firewalls will no longer do it. We still will need them, but we also need new tools. And finally, I think a very important point is cybersecurity is not a tool. It's not something that you can buy. Cybersecurity is establishing structures and processes. Because it's an ongoing challenge to keep up with the attacks, to not only prevent but also detect and react on a daily basis. And because it's a process rather than tools, I think one of the major requirements for cyber security in the healthcare business is joining forces. I think it's not the smartest attitude to think we can do it on our own. I think that the healthcare providers, the industry, like mine, the application providers, the regulatory bodies, they really should join forces. Only with such an approach we can really keep up with the attack scenarios, and I think the time has never been better to reach that eye level. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. That's a perfect point, because we have here an ecosystem from industry, from founders, from various medicine economy. But now we are welcoming Mrs. Wels-Maug. She is Principal Healthcare Analyst of Creative Intellect Consulting in Great Britain. And she has over 20 years of professional experience in doing IT and healthcare. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I work for Creative Intellect, and it's a British company, an analyst company, And I thought it would be interesting today to share with you the experiences, the lessons learned of the huge cyber attack we had in May of this year, WannaCry. And I'd like to give you the spin from a British perspective. So what did the Brits learn from it? So just to quickly recap, WannaCry hit the world on the 12th of May of this year. It hit more than 150 countries, all across industries, including Deutsche Telekom and Spanish railways. Anyways, it particularly impacted the ability of the UK National Health Service, the NHS, to perform their duties. So what happened? 1/5 of all NHS bodies were affected. They could not have access to medical data, specifically not to images, digital images. So it was basically a nightmare. Operations had to be cancelled, patient had to wait. So the whole system was down for more than 2 days. So that's the background. So I'd like to, my best lessons learned are based on conversations I had with NHS Digital in England, as well as CIOs of various hospitals in England and the UK. So I'd like to quote the Senior Information Risk Officer of NHS Digital, Jean Walsh, and he said, WannaCry was the best learning experience our organization would have never have wished for. And I think that sets the scene. So a nightmare for them too. So, but what are the lessons learned? So from what I gather, there are 2 baskets, what can be learned. One are so the conceptual, fundamental thinkings, fundamental considerations, and the other baskets are more hands-on advice. So let's start with the fundamental considerations. 3 key takeaways I'd love to give you. One is cybersecurity belongs on the management agenda. I think WannaCry was a wake-up call. It was seen as security is an IT topic, but it is not. It affects everyone in the organization, so it needs to be on the management agenda. And as such, it should be implemented in a cyber playbook. It should be part of human resources, of training, education, so it must be embedded in the overall company culture. Right, and what is important as well is an open culture where people can as well admit mistakes or oversights, because we all sometimes do open emails we shouldn't. So it's important to have an open culture where you can admit failure so that the overall organization can grow and learn. So the second topic is invest in people. I mean, everyone says it's people, processes, and technology, but it really became apparent it's more or less important. People are the most important, and Reinhard from HIMSS, I love to quote your last survey where it says cybersecurity and said the most, the most vulnerable bit in the chain, or the most dangerous part, is the human being, is the employee who does something we should not do. So take care of your employees, invest, let them know what is a good behavior with regards to cybersecurity. And then shift in mindset. We talked about it's a culture. The perceived importance of cybersecurity has changed. So it is no longer just IT. It is IT, or cybersecurity is a means in order to be able to perform better patient outcomes. So it's not a means in itself. So I think once that is communicated properly and sinks in, people will act differently, and each person will see their own responsibility within that chain. So this would be the more conceptual considerations. So as takeaways, I'd love to give you 4 takeaways of more practical advice. Develop a cyber playbook. It's really important. Where am I? Oh yeah, here. And a cyber playbook defines the roles and responsibilities of every member of the staff before, after, and during a cyber attack. And it also defines key action steps that need to be taken in response to cyber attacks. That could be including incident detection, notification, analysis, forensics, and as well communication. So all this needs to be a script. However, one size doesn't fit all. You can't just do a cyber playbook. Each organization has to define which data is most precious for each organization and then develop a cyber playbook around it. So, yeah. So the next topic or the next key takeaway would be communication. Really important to inform everyone something has happened and to inform which systems are affected or which systems are not affected. In the case of the NHS England, they have the N3 broadband network that basically connects all entities of the NHS together and as well carries the email, the NHS email. So NHS staff assumed N3 was, the email was compromised. So what they did, they pulled the plug, disconnected from the email system. And as a consequence, the whole situation got even worse because nobody could communicate safely in the system. Instead, people started using Twitter and went to social media, Facebook. That is anything but secure. So you really have to communicate and you have to establish a means of communication in case your major backbone fails. So that's a consideration. And as well, people stressed, don't talk techno. Don't talk too technical. Talk, communicate in a way everyone understands in an incident. Third consideration or third takeaway is education. It really is an education issue. Everyone needs to know what is cyber security confirmed behavior. I need to know, it should be sort of a cybersecurity hygiene so that everyone applies like washing hands in the clinical world. And that needs to be trained and educated. And then the last takeaway I'd like to share with you is cyber attacks. Your system is only as secure as your weakest point. And as a hospital or a healthcare organization, you need to know your entire ecosystem. It's not enough, you know, hackers will always attack the weakest spot, and once they find that, they will exploit it and take the booty as much as they can. And it could be an unprotected wireless printer, it could be a doctor who shares a diagnostic over the iPhone or over her smartphone, and these are all loopholes. So it's really important to secure that and understand your security issues. And I think one thing is obvious, the fax machine as a major means of communication is the least secure means of communication. And with that, I'd like to close and thank you for your attention.
Last but not least in our round is Professor Strametz. He is since 2013 Professor of Medicine for Economists at the RheinMain University of Applied Science, and he is an MD also.
Yes, I am.
Please,
so,
you are.
it was a pleasure to me to present my presentation for you, and as I am an MD, I was a risk producer for 8.5 years. Putting patients to sleep, not only to sleep, to narcosis, and so every morning at 7:30 I stopped patients' breathing. And I did this with a fully awareness of the risks I've taken, and I think that is a red line throughout my presentation. So first of all, I'm here for the German Coalition on Patient Safety. It's a non-profit association of organizations involved in the promotion of patient safety in Germany. And so I'm here as a volunteer as well. If you like to see my other voluntary conflict of interest, feel free to visit my Xing account. We develop recommendations for doctors as well as patients to improve patient safety in Germany. And one of our actual targets is to improve digital literacy of patients as well as digital literacy of doctors or other healthcare professionals, since this is one of the main targets of patient safety concerns in our view. So you probably noticed a Facebook post if you live in Germany. I think if you don't live in Germany, you didn't recognize this. In the wonderful city of Pinneberg, there was an incident that somebody who went from Pinneberg to Hamburg to celebrate a party left his home, and when he got back, he found his door to be broken up by the police. And he has a copy of Amazon Assistant Alexa, and he accused her for having a party without his permission. So what happened? Until 3 o'clock in the morning, there was loud music in this flat and this apartment, and the police were concerned that something badly happened and broke up the door. So this was the Facebook post of this guy, and the German news media gladly accepted this as a news, and they thought, what it is it a bug? Was it hacking? Were some ghosts there? After this, Amazon analyzed Alexa and made a final statement that it wasn't a hack or it wasn't a bug, but this problem simply seemed to be a PEPCAC. You probably know this acronym, PEPCAC. It means problem exists between keyboard and chair. Or as we would say in Germany, and you cannot accuse us for being too subtle, it's a DAO. It was the dumbest human user. So what happened, just when he left the flat, Amazon told, he activated Alexa with a smartphone. So, and this reminds me of a poem of Johann Wolfgang Goethe. It's a high-risk poem in Germany because nearly every pupil has to recitate this poem at class. It's The Sorcerer's Apprentice, called the Zauberlehrling, der Zauberlehrling. And there's one line, it says, "From the spirit that I called, sir, deliver me." So obviously, this user was not capable of what he was doing. And I think this is one of the parts I would like to add to the last presentation. The weakest chain in the safety process is the person who sits in front of the monitor. So if you look at digitization and patient safety, and if you look at the quality aspects as they are, for example, defined in the European standard EN 15224, digitization can affect nearly all aspects of quality in healthcare. So appropriate and correct care is not being able to prevent, to give. There's no availability of data. The continuity of care is broken. You cannot talk about effectiveness, neither efficiency. Evidence and knowledge-based care cannot be conducted if you don't have the right information. The accessibility of a lot of things is not guaranteed, and most of all, it directly affects patient safety, so the physical and psychological integrity of patients directly. Not only the data security, but the health or the life of patients directly. So if you look at the solution for dealing with risk in medical treatment, you cannot eliminate all risk in medical treatment. So as I say, I'm a risk producer, but you can consciously deal with the risks associated with treatment of patients. Clinical risk management nearly is the answer. Not to eliminate all risks, but to deal with them and to minimize the risks in an adequate way with adequate principles. And you see it starts with a quality policy, with a risk management strategy, with a responsibility. So it starts with leadership. And if you talk to leaders of healthcare organizations, or if you talk to doctors, general physicians, who are their own leaders, the question is, are they fully aware of the situation? Do they have the situational awareness necessary to prevent from attacks or prevent from DAO attacks? So maybe the own employee can do at least as much harm as an external hacker can, sometimes without intention. So what we are trying to do is to put the situational awareness on this topic, that it's not very smart to communicate with your patient via WhatsApp or Twitter, so there are some other aspects you have to consider. Right now, in Germany, after the German election, during the German election, one party had a slogan called "Digitization first, concern second." And as I am a doctor who is capable of what can happen if digitization goes wrong, I would say that's not a very wise and clever way. I would say, like other high reliability organizations learned, they say production first, but safety always. So I would say digitization first, but safety always. We are currently working on 2 recommendations that are nearly completed. Recommendations for patients and consumers, how to safely walk to the digitization world using healthcare apps, for example, since we all know some incidents like diabetes apps who suggest to give much more insulin than it is survivable. if you let them calculate your dose, and we give some recommendations for healthcare professionals what they can do to minimize the risk, to consciously treat the risks associated with digitization. And as you can see, our annual conference of the German Coalition for Patient Safety in May 2018 will deal with digitization and patient safety as the main topic of the whole conference, targeting and affecting all aspects of patient safety. So my statement is it all depends on digital health literacy, so we have to strengthen the weakest part in the chain of safe cybersecurity. We have to strengthen the patients as well as the healthcare professionals. Thank you very much for your patience.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have a lot of discussion today. And my first question would go actually to Professor Strametz. We heard about WannaCry in Britain, and that the NHA was, I think, 6,900 appointments were cancelled, and it was really bad, as we heard. But in Germany, at least so far, it has been a nuance rather than a catastrophe. A train station, some arrival where departures have malfunctioned, and a few tickets machines stopped. Do the Germans know something better than the Brits? Or what was the point that, so there was not such an influence in Germany?
Well, I have a serious doubt that this hadn't this much an influence in Germany. So first of all, if the German railway system breaks down, we are quite used to it in Germany. So this wasn't the baddest point. There was a cyber attack also in Germany, and a lot of hospitals were affected. Like, for example, near Düsseldorf, the Lukas-Neuss Krankenhaus was 1 week offline. So they had to, if they wanted to have a lab result, they had to send messengers. Not messages, but messengers, people walking to the lab to get the lab results because they were completely offline. But as the institutions in Germany stated, a lot of hospitals had these attacks, but only few of them were capable of telling that they were attacked. So there was a detection problem, like it is with other security aspects. If you look at the NHS, there's a full transparency in patient safety indicators, like wrong side surgery. It's mandatory. And in Germany, I think we are not better than in the UK, but we don't detect this, so we have a detection problem. I think it was a severe problem as well in Germany, as I noticed some reactions. For example, I'm not a doctor anymore at the University Hospital, but I'm in contact with lots of doctors around hospitals all around Germany. And I sent them PDF files or doc files, and right after WannaCry, everything was blocked. So, and I don't think this was only preventive action. I think a lot of hospitals were hacked in Germany too, but we have a detection problem.
So we just didn't know. Okay.
Also, yeah.
Okay. How would you evaluate really, for example, the resilience of the health sector to cyber attacks through Europe? Are we good? Are we bad? Can we say something about this? Maybe Professor Bauer?
Well, I would say we are just at the beginning to really research that and look at that and find preventive action. There have been some crises, as you just mentioned. I think there have been a lot more which are not public. And what we all know is that the risk is increasing. If you compare it to financial institutions, like banks have been tried to be hacked for years. And they have developed some systems which help them not to be hacked that much. Although you don't read that much in the press about it because banks try to not make that public. Yeah, but there have been a lot of things over the last 10, 15 years. And if we compare this branch of business to the health system, I think the health system is like 15 years back, so needs to speed up.
Okay, about the finance sector, I can say there was an attack on the SWIFT bank transfer, and where the National Bank of Bangladesh was a little bit lost money somewhere on the IT part.
So, what do I do? Press? Okay. I'd like to add just some figures. Apparently, I was told that in 2016, the number of attacks on healthcare institutions rose in Europe by 60%. And one consideration with regard to the financial markets, healthcare information is more valuable, apparently 70% more valuable than the most risky financial information, I was told. So there is more money in hacking healthcare data.
About data, Professor Bauer, patient data. I think the patient data are bonanza for cybercrime, because cybercrime people love this data. And it's the impression that the healthcare industry found a new powerful way to store the data in health records, but do not remember how to close the door. Is this impression right?
Well, they are not, I would say they have not really found the way to close the door. And it's not only the industry who wants the patient data, but the patient themselves. They want their own data. They want to be able to have all their records, keep track of their records, have them digitalized, yeah, so they always have access and so on. So I think the need is from the patient and from the industry, but the industry has the task, as you say, to close the door, to make it really, really safe. And there's, I would say, a lot more work to do to make the data safe.
Yeah, sure.
If I may add here, I think there are also some historical reasons. So typically you would start with some IT application with a very narrow context, like some expert systems in radiology also. And then once you have adopted that, once that has been adopted by your users, then you start only then you start thinking about, okay, we interfaces to a hospital information system, for example, would be nice. So you start connecting the systems, and only by this, sooner or later you arrive at some sort of data pools or data lakes, and then you realize, oh, we may have an issue here, because now we have a central place that may be compromised.
Okay.
Maybe one additional comment on the risk, and I think you mentioned that the risk is a lot higher than for financial institutions. Well, that's because the risk it's a risk to the life. And it's known, probably some of you have seen the series Homeland, yeah, where they get access to the code of the heart machine, yeah, from the vice president, yeah, and that's not unrealistic. It happened. Yeah, Dick Cheney exchanged his heart machine 1.5 years ago, and like 2 months ago there was a press statement that one of the largest fabricator of these machines will exchange all the machines, yeah, in the heart. The heart, I don't exactly know the English word for that. Herzschrittmacher. Pacemaker. They will exchange thousands of pacemakers because they are accessible via cybersecurity tools to the persons. So it's a real risk of life. And you mentioned earlier the diabetes topic. We have done a live hacking of diabetes app, yeah, in Hamburg, and but people don't recognize what you can do to prevent hacking of these apps. Sometimes it's so easy to do that. So I don't think we lack technology or we lack process, we just lack awareness.
Okay. Awareness is a good topic. Cybersecurity, well, I think is largely considered as an IT problem in the healthcare. But I think doctors, nurses, administrators, they have to be aware what they are dealing with. For example, I got my diagnosis from my doctor over PDF, over email. I was a little bit shocked to get such information. He was the point, it was cool. So the point is, should we need to raise the awareness what we are doing with so security awareness? Maybe, President?
I think we definitely should do. If you compare the innovation of digitization to other medical procedures, no doctor would start an operation he's not capable of. So if you consider these new processes, new structures as part of the medical treatment, you should take the whole responsibility and the capability of these procedures, as well as for new operations, new drugs, new medical devices. So I wouldn't start a procedure if I'm not fully capable of any consequences or problems that can occur. And for example, as an anesthetist, you always have to have a plan B, plan C, plan D if something happens besides the normal way. So we really should have a plan B or C if something happens. We should be more resilient to this, and we should be more aware of this, definitely. So I will compare a medical app to a medical procedure that will be invented newly. So I have to have the responsibility. If I use it, I have the responsibility to handle any complication.
If I may add two indicators for how aware we are in healthcare regarding cybersecurity. Of course, it's only 2 indicators out of many others, but the one thing is, do we have dedicated IT specialists as resources in the IT teams? And so talking about the German market, for example, I personally know, let's say, 2, 3, 4, no more than a handful of institutions where they really can claim, okay, we're, for example, 2 dedicated IT security hospital specialists hired in our hospital IT team. The other indicator is, do we have dedicated IT security budgets? I personally do not know of any dedicated IT security budgets. Of course, there are dedicated IT budgets, but that's rather on a daily negotiating basis. So on what do we spend that?
Okay, so we are still in the area IT is cost, and we are just not investing in this. But it's a pity, because the health sector is a critical infrastructure also, and so we have to invest. We will discuss further on, but I would also welcome the audience to ask questions and just give me a hint so that we can answer here in this area. We said about cybersecurity awareness. How can we approach this in the health sector so that medical personnel, nurses, staff, whatever, is getting more aware about what data they do, what infrastructure they use, that are more cybersecurity aware?
I think I start with this. I mean, I already alluded to this in my speech. It's a cultural issue. It's something that has to come from the top, and awareness has a lot to do with information. I need to know what are the risks, how do I behave, you know, and I think there are different means. Some NHS hospitals, for example, work with portals that have videos, just simple, and you can look at and you can watch it and you can see, oh my, I would have done the same, or, you know, but so it needs a thorough approach. But I think it can be taught. It's an educational, informational approach, very doable. But it needs constant updates, obviously, as the cyber criminals won't sleep.
Yes, and the other thing is, you had a very nice quote in your introductory session. In other words, I think we need more incidents of, like you mentioned, the local incident here in a hospital, because this wearing off of the awareness, that's so obvious. So whenever you personally experience a cyber incident, then you are definitely aware. But I often experience a year, 1.5 years later, it's worn off. People don't remember it. So really, that would help to have more. Yeah, I mean, speaking, as a devil's advocate here, of course we do not want those, but it really would help, and that's the big opportunity in such a crisis, that you become aware and start to think it through.
My view is that the healthcare system itself does not really like IT, and they don't like security either. So I don't think it will come from the healthcare system itself, but either from the public, like from the users who want more security, from certain events, so more or less negative events that they have been hacked or things where they had a problem or so, or it will come from the state via regulation. Because the healthcare people themselves, they know about these topics, but I don't see really plans to move forward on that topic, to increase awareness and use the tools which are known. There are a lot of tools known how to make the applications more secure. Maybe not perfect, difficult to really prevent from the zero exploit topics. Yeah, that's really, really difficult. But there are a lot of other things you can do, and like man-in-the-middle attacks. Yeah, it's not that difficult to prevent a technology from these attacks, but no, people don't use them.
Okay, I would ask, of course, our MD why medical people don't like IT people.
Yes, I think they have a certain sense of cautiousness because sometimes they simply don't understand them. So as you mentioned, you shouldn't talk techno, you shouldn't be too sophisticated, and as the digitization takes part of our whole life, not only our medical life, but our whole life, I would also issue an educational prescription. We know what to do in the analog world. We know not to cross the street when the red light is on. We know that, and we can do this. So I think we are capable of the risks if we are fully aware of them. But if you look at the medical education, for example, in Germany, there is no educational unit dealing with cyber risks at all in a 12-semester study of medicine. So I never had anything in this study, and today also doctors and nurses are not educated that there are some risks. So and also why are there emails offering $250 million if you make a transaction of $30 to a certain bank at the Cayman Islands? Why are there those emails? Because they work. If they wouldn't work, they would disappear. So I think these educational prescriptions should be there, and I think a risk management should not prevent from innovations, as we heard in other symposiums here, but it should be a conscious dealing with the risk. And I think we can do this, but we have to start taking this as part of our daily lives, and security, like not crossing the street when the red light is on, should be as self-understanding at not open any email attachment I don't know.
I agree, and I'd just like to make one point. The Charité in Berlin started now, I think as of this semester, to introduce digital, well, how to use digital technology for young students, for medical students. But that is one university I know of. Yes, exactly, it's a pilot, so, but there is some movement.
Well, I would say we have to start in the schools. We have to start in the primary school and even lower to educate what is computer science, what is IT, how to deal with this. And I'm trying to discuss this with also our Kultusministerium to say that we have to have computer science really taught from the school and taught in the real world, in the applicable way. What do I mean with this? In terms, if we don't know what are the bases of computer science, then we have the book, the IT book, we just see the pictures, but we cannot read it. So we have to read it, and this would be the one point.
I fully agree on the educational discussion, so that we need more education there, but I think also that like for nurses and doctors, it's really difficult to step into the details, and you mentioned that also. So education would help a little bit, but won't solve the problem. So I think there's more needed as supportive industry to support to solve the problems. Maybe that's what people talk about also. What we offer is like certifications, so that you have a seal where you say, okay, when a technology has that seal, at least they are using the current standard of technology to protect their solutions. and other things. But education alone is just not enough.
So you mentioned now that the application providers, for example, that would be me, for example, we addressed the issue. Just one point, and that was the headline for my introductory round. I think we need to do it together. For example, if we're talking about data privacy as part of cybersecurity, for example, the General Data Protection Regulation now on EU level requires deletion, right, of data. Now, if you're talking about a complex IT application landscape in a hospital, deleting things is not so easy. There are conflicting regulations, like in Germany, the Röntgenverordnung, for example, with that data privacy things. And you have semantic interconnections. For example, what happens if you delete the data in the hospital information system? Then there will be an entry in the radiology information system that no longer can reference to something in the let's say major ERP system. So I think that cannot be solved by the providers on their own. You need to enter a dialogue where you find out, okay, what makes sense, what doesn't work, how can we address these things. So it's really about doing it together.
Okay, I would say also about regulation. For example, Internet of Things. Who has, for example, Sonos loudspeakers at home, some cameras, and then Philips Hue bumps with wireless remote control? Internet of Things, everything without security. So everything is open. So, and I think the point is that we are not also willing to pay for security, but otherwise they would be there. But there are issues we have to regulate. We have also in a car a fasten seat belt, and because it's regulated, it's demanded that we have to in case we want to drive. Do we need something similar in the health sector?
Well, there are some regulations. So, for example, for the public health care system, there is an authority, and they defined 2 years ago a very detailed list of status of technology. So they have done that for electronic communication, for a lot of topics. Well, probably not yet for IoT in that detail, but they are working on that. So there are some standards. There are also ISO standards and other certificates and so on. So there is something there. But as said, not for IoT yet. That's an evolving topic, and a lot of people are working on standards for security there. But that's much more difficult than for the existing or older technologies.
Okay, thank you. To your question, do we need regulation? I would say clear yes. For example, in Germany, there is the so-called Umsetzungsprojekt Kritis, UP Kritis, and the idea is to identify critical industries, and among those, how come there is also healthcare, and if we now would have some sort of industry standard, how to do healthcare IT in a secure way, this would give a lot of guidance and security for all those people working in hospitals, or how to address this, because there is so much insecurity, because it's very complex. It's complex on a technology level. It's organizational wise very complex. So if you would say this is a de facto industry standard, this is how we want to address these days security in healthcare IT, this would help so much. And the regulatory framework, it's there. It has now to be filled with concrete advice. Do it like this or that. So we would really appreciate to have those standards for our industry.
Well, just to say, I would not agree completely, because ubiquitous is such to say, in case you know that you have been attacked, you have to report it to the BSI. Yeah, this is the main issue here behind. So, yeah, and the point is, how do I know that I was attacked? 200 days, maybe not. So it's okay. It's the first step to regulatories to report it to the BSI. But I think we need much more in this area, how to to detection, to help also. That the IT industry is helping the hospitals with maybe new technology, so to better detect and also to respond. For example, what we are working on is automated response. So automated detection, analyzes, and automated also respond to some issues or some attacks that are going on. So the industry is here in charge, I think.
Yes, we accept that that demand for definitely. Coming back to the ubiquitous, I think what you said, that is part of that regulation, because you have to certify your information security and management system after 2 years. And that addresses just what you described. It's not only about reporting, that also makes sense, I think, but it's mainly about having established those security processes. For example, having said, okay, this colleague of mine, she or he is responsible for IT security, and she's in charge, right?
Yes, I would also say something to your point that we need some regulations, because the user doesn't want to pay for like security in smart homes. So if I tell a user I am able to open your door in San Francisco or Melbourne or London or Pinneberg with my handy, with my mobile device, and you could be prevented by this by paying 15% more for your door lock, I think everybody would agree to pay 50% or 30% more, but I think they are simply not capable of that. I can do this, and I'm not a very professional hacker. I'm just a user. Yeah, but I can Google in the internet how to open a smart home door. So I think most of, and since this is very expensive at the moment, so we are at the beginning of this Internet of Things. I think customers who can afford to buy this would happily buy more. By having some secure, not only smart but secure devices. So again, I think it's literacy, but of course regulations are able to set literacy in a certain common way. So if we would have some regulations, for example, like in the wearing a seatbelt, nobody would do this. So there are still some who try to do without. I can say this as an emergency doctor. There are some drivers who didn't wear their seatbelts, but I think regulation is able to enhance literacy as well, but on an additive basis. So it's not a contradiction of way, but we have to move hand in hand with regulations, with education, with literacy, and of course also the manufacturers have to set certain standards to build safe products.
So just for the protocol, I can hack it. So please buy something what is secure.
So thank you very much for this very nice conversation. I'm Sven Engel. I'm a biologist. I'm a clinical researcher, and I'm an IT specialist as well. And okay. Yes, and I'm an IT specialist as well. And I think I know much about compliance management and all the regulatory surrounding in clinical research, in pharmaceutical research. And as an SME and as an innovator in my area, I think we do not need more regulations. More regulations at the moment in Germany, for me, and please excuse, it sounds like excluding innovative companies from the market. We do need more innovation. We do need, from my opinion, in cybersecurity, we need more flexibility to fight against these security issues, and we need more sensibility. But I'm not sure whether we need an additional regulation here. For example, the understanding in Germany when talking about safe IT systems, when talking about systems in clinical research to give patients faster access to new drugs, it is very, very difficult. So it depends on the kind of micro you have. So yeah, so it is very difficult to speak about this issues with investors, etc., other people with strategic investors, that they understand what you are really talking about here. That this was one of the reasons why I had a good conversation for a few hours with Martin Gibson from the NHSR in Manchester 2 weeks ago, and I was very happy to talk directly in England with people. They know exactly what I'm talking about and what we are doing and what security, what new systems, what clinical research, what all this stuff around means. And this is the problem, and I fully agree with you that the awareness what happens in Germany, and I fully agree with you. We are not better than the NHS with the system. We don't realize what happened. And this is absolutely the problem in Germany. And we need more innovative power. We need more people investing in smaller companies, and Telekom also invited to do so, and to bring more innovation to the market. And then we can talk about new regulations, but I would like to ask you also to include in this discussion with the authorities also small and middle-sized organizations, because I guess they can bring into this discussion about the regulations a total different view to guys from Telekom, SRP, and hope you agree with me that this can help a little bit to bring things forward here. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to respond?
Yeah, thank you for your comment. I think I agree to some of the points, especially what you mentioned first regarding regulation, that it might help. You said, well, you won't like more regulation. I would say it can help a little bit, but it won't be so detailed that everybody knows what exactly to do on security measures. Because there is a status of technology which develops year over year. The hackers develop year over year. They have more and more sophisticated models to attack applications, and companies need to further develop year over year their defensive measures to prevent the hackers from attacking them. So regulation can only give a framework, and I think, well, we need some more regulation so that companies really have to apply certain standards, but the concrete measures needs to be developed by the industry, by the experts.
So working on it.
Yeah, so I fully agree to you. 2/3 of the world literature of taxes is written in German. And really, we have a problem with less regulation, so we are world champion in regulating something. So, and I think it's like in risk management, less is more. We don't need much more regulation, we need the right regulation. We have to set standards, red lines we will not cross, but also have to think about some regulations that are redundant or maybe breaks in innovations. So I think it's also some kind of cultural change, not to regulate everything in order to rule the world with laws, which we cannot do, but to set a certain framework, a rigid framework with red lines, but in this framework innovation should be possible. So it shouldn't be a contradiction between innovation and safety.
Yeah, I also agree. It cannot be a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. If we have the right regulation, we should not over-regulate everything, give space for innovation, but also innovation in cybersecurity. So, for example, security by design, privacy by design, or security by default as a unique selling point. But on the other side, of course, we have to build such ecosystems, clusters, where research with industry, with public area cooperates and develop new stuff, I would say.
I think the overall ecosystem has become so complicated. IT, security. If you talk to management consulting companies, they say, we used to go out and with 1 or 2 people in the team and talk to people about securing their operation, hospitals and other institutions. And now the system is so complex. We can only operate in an ecosystem in order to address, you know, the tip of the iceberg. It's just so varied aspects to understand. And from my experience with the NHS and their reaction to the WannaCry crisis was as well that IT people look as well to the suppliers, and they said when it happened, we called our system suppliers and asked for their help, and you know, some of them said, well, too bad, can't help. So they were not helpful. Others were. They actually organized telephone conferences and told them what to do, which patches to look or install. So I think everyone has to chip in. And yes, there is a responsibility of the industry. And actually they can make it as their unique selling point to give that little bit that expertise and that forum for help.
But I think we have another problem, and which is not just complexity. But if you see it, state-of-the-art MRI equipment costs 3 million, something like this. And we are exchanging the update for operating system is so much faster than we can replace the systems, and then we don't have the certification.
The problem of the legacy systems.
It's the problem of the legacy system.
That are not properly maintained and patched, and they are a weak point in the system.
And if I'm patching it, then maybe I lost the certification about it. So how can we have this different speed? So having legacy system in the medical area, on the other side having growing cyber attack surface. What do we have to do here?
Well, now I come back to the IoT example you had. Well, on IoT, when you develop certificates, one important point is that the devices need to be capable of getting patches, so updates. Yeah, so you are able to update the software there or the code. So then you can introduce new preventive measures. Yeah, I don't think it's a problem of the certificates. The certificates should be that flexible that when you add updates, that they are still valid, or that you get another check whether the update is good enough. Yeah, I think certificates can be adapted to that.
But if we have regulations, for example, can we say that in the European market we just have hardware and software which is updated, which is possible to be updated? This could be one recommendation or one statement.
That's one recommendation, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, I was a little bit curious reading something like medicine of the future. This is a direct question for you. In the US, there is a tablet has been approved which reports by sensor that it was taken, medicine, or eat it. Is this true? And what about privacy? If everybody knows that I have eaten now this medicine, so everybody can get information, or if I'm this medicine, what illness do I have, what disease do I have?
Well, I heard about that, yeah, but I have not, well, I would not take it yet. But, I think one has to really assure that privacy is looked at when you do these things, because you need to make sure that the tablet is secured and so on. And with that, I come back to what I said earlier, that security always needs to be managed in a risk-adjusted way. So when the risk is high, then you need to secure for that. So if the medicine is like, is it normal vitamins? Yeah, you take, okay, where's the risk? Yeah, if it's like a very specialized medicine which shows that you may have cancer or some other illness, well, the risk is higher that other people get it and manipulate the maybe the doses or things like that. So I think these are new innovations, but I would be careful using them right now and really make sure that they are only applied when there is no high risk.
So I see that we need a new capability, being a risk manager. You have to always be a good risk manager.
Yeah, and we perhaps need also capabilities of clever communications and leadership, because as far as I understood that example of that sensor-based pill, this was some sort of a proof of concept. It's not necessarily meant to improve patient compliance or so. It's as far as I understood, I'm sure you're an expert on that. It's in the context of psychopharmaca, whatever that is in English. Psychopharma, okay. So it's very debatable whether those patients are a good clientele for being prescribed those pills, but the idea should be, and I come back to what you mentioned in your intro statement about that election statement, about digital first and concerns second. I think that pill is an ideal example for that, because it should have been addressed like the following. So this is what we can do today. The chances are this and that. We can improve, for example, those patients' life by this and that hasn't happened. The communication only was, you can now swallow a pill that transmits some signals to some other device. There was
signals encrypted?
Yeah, no idea. They didn't say that. So it was just, it sends the data that you have swallowed it. So there is nothing about the use case. So that's a perfect example for your point mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and if it's a proof of concept, it should be a phase 2 trial, phase 2A trial. And then after phase 3 trial, we could invent it and we could take it. If we see what are the chances, what are the risks, is there real benefit of this? So we shouldn't do simply just things because they are possible, but because they have a benefit. And if you put this in a regular phase 3 trial, and you take into consideration the ethical issues, for example, and I think there's a market for patients with dementia or anything else, as we know that regular medication for some kind of diseases is only taken in 50% of all cases of mentally healthy people. So as a reminder, for example, it could be a perfect add-on, as well as for other instances, but this should be evidence-based.
Okay, that's actually, it has to be in the context. On the other side, I can know exactly, if I know that you are getting this pill, some conclusion about your background, disease profile. Yes, and this is the point, I think, that coming back to the, at the beginning in discussion, pointing that the medical people don't like the IT people. This means that the medical people don't like the technology, and don't they? Well, I exaggerating a little bit, but the point is, and the technology is complex, so nobody wants to use it. Actually, we have to because it's necessary. And is this not a danger that we actually need more security, well, more usable security, let's say it's usable security for the health sector, because these are really important data we are handling here?
I would answer with two issues to that point. I observe on a European and international level that the function of the IT responsibility is increasingly taken by people with a medical background like you. In Germany, it's not as pronounced as in the UK. I think Germany has a very small 14% or so, and in the UK it's by now 56 or 60%. So many more medical doctors move into IT just because they really, I mean, I think IT, and that is the second point, is user experience. IT is a means, but certainly not a means, you know, it helps, it supports, but in order to support, it has to follow a workflow that is is applicable to the people who work with it. If you give me well, look at me, if I use my mobile and it's new, I ask my children how to do it. Yeah, and I think this has to be as well in IT and healthcare IT, it has to be much more, it has to be user-friendly and not more complicated. And I think if it's user-friendly, people will use it. No one can afford to have long training periods. It's just not possible, right? On a daily basis. Yeah. So I say yes, it needs to be user friendly, and medical people get increasingly involved in IT. That is my perception. And I don't. I mean, they are two worlds, but they are moving much closer together as the intrinsic value of IT is actually amplified, or everyone, many people see that IT has a value.
What exactly were those 2 percentages you gave?
There was a HIMSS survey done. Well, I can make it available to you on who's the decision makers, who makes the decision on IT, and they broke down by different IT roles, CIO, CCIO, and CMIO, Central Medical Information Officer, and then it across different European countries, and Germany was low on the medical front, but in the UK it was much higher.
Yeah, I think doctors love IT guys who make their life easier and the life of the patient safer. But I think I've talked to a lot of IT guys who understood this, but I also talked to a lot of IT guys who thought the process has to follow my software algorithm. And I say form follows function, the software follows the process, not vice versa. And I think still a lot of IT guys have no idea what a hospital is like. So for my healthcare economists, I teach at the Wiesbaden Business School, they all have to go 2 months in a hospital. They have to nurse there, they have to do nursing to experience what it is like to treat patients in order to understand what you are talking about. And I've met a lot of guys who didn't understand anything, who thought building a car or flying a plane is as easy as treating a patient. And as we live in a very, very complex area, I think it's the most complex business around the world, healthcare. They are not even nearly capable of what we are doing. And so I think it's a very good move for doctors to move into IT because they really know the needs as well of the patients as of the healthcare professionals. And if you meet these criteria, doctors will gladly accept IT as a support, but not as a main target of treating patients.
Yeah, I could not agree more with this. Absolutely, IT is just a support, but it has to be a good support. We are developing apps for medical issues and also for several other areas from the military doctors in our area, and I can say that I know what are the problems there, and sometimes it's really communication problems to say what they really want and what the IT guys want, and but I think talking to each other helps. Most of the time. Yeah. Are there any other questions here from the audience? Everybody wants to go home. Oh, this was a yes. This was a yes. Oh, we have one question.
In fact, I'm not so sure the medical doctor needs to go to to move to the IT to change what he is doing and doing more IT. I think that medical doctor should stay a doctor, but should work together with someone who can do IT. Because to learn both and to make both perfect, it's not possible. You need to learn your whole life, more or less. So therefore, I think the big problem is there are a lot of good ideas from ITler, but they have no idea what's the reality. So if you have an idea, you need to start to talk to doctors before you develop, and you need to develop together, and the doctor needs to try and to look if it's working, and so on. I'm not sure the doctor should change what he's doing. He should stay a doctor. And I'm the IT man, so I should stay with my IT, or I need to study again. So therefore, it's not working. But you need to work from the beginning together, and then you can succeed to do something useful. And I think that's a big problem I can see here on the Medica. You find a lot of really interesting products and ideas, but a lot are not really the reality. So therefore, I think that you need to go from the beginning together.
I just want to answer, in answer to your comment, it is not that there is a must that the medical doctors in England must go over to IT. They don't. They choose to, and it might have to do with the fact that the digitization, the digital maturity in England is higher than in Germany, for example. So doctors who practice might see the benefit they have by having digital images at the ready, or the medical information at the ready, and therefore they are more inclined to go over with IT, yet to improve the processes. But it's not there is no force.
Yeah, and so for me, I work as a translator between economy and medicine, and I would still consider myself to be a doctor. So what I'm doing is still medicine, although it's at a business school. So I think we need very good doctors, we need very good economists, but we need those translators, since this business is so complex that there at least a few have to put people together and to see and to realize both sides of them. So I fully agree, not every doctor has to be an IT specialist, and I'm not an IT specialist either, but you have to have some people who can translate these complex situations, and then you have the specialists on both sides working together hand in hand.
But should we do it more easier? Why about to say, for example, security, there is a nice principle, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Couldn't we do it more that, yes, from the IT perspective, industry, to make the security more understandable, simpler? I just have a button, say, make my system secure, not to bother about IP addresses, about firewall rules. And everybody thinks at home, I have a firewall, I'm secure, which is the wrongest point ever. So I think we should blame the industry. This was a yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. The only question is, it's not that we as a manufacturer would deny not to do it. The question is, what does it take to be able to? What are the prerequisites for that? And I think there is a lot of organizational issues. For example, you have to agree on some standards. We touched that already, and that I think is the critical path to usable IT security or so.
Is this really so hard? If I'm a consumer, yeah, then I say we have such energy levels on the washing machines, A, B, C, A++, whatever. Can we not have it from the IoT stuff or my wearables, something like a security label, and to say if there is a security label on site, then it's secure, okay, then I buy it. And if there's no security label, I don't buy it. Why it's so hard?
That's not that difficult. For example, we are working on that, on certificates. Yeah, we are providing certificates, and there's quite some simple standards behind them. Yeah, first you have to follow the law. Yeah, I showed that 10 different laws which are relevant for the healthcare system when you look at IT security. So you have to look at like the law, the different articles. What do you have to fulfill? One point. The other point is look at the status of technology, what you have to fulfill. What are current standards? How will they develop? And when you fulfill these criteria, you follow the law and follow the current status of technology, then you can get a certificate. And with that, you can show the green light to the consumers. Yeah, this is probably very, very safe to use.
Well, I think this is a B2B market, and B2C is something else. As a consumer, I just want to have, oh, security label, I buy it. Or not?
Yeah, but this label can be used for consumers.
And if I may add this aspect, there is some difference between, for example, the washing machine you mentioned, and for example, IT infrastructure operations. So in the washing machine example, you have it delivered, you plug it in. into the net, and then...
And the washing machine has also VLAN, so...
and there you go. For example, when it comes to security certificates like ISO 27001 for IT infrastructure applications, we, for example, as Deutsche Telekom say, okay, we prepare it to the best possible extent, for example, with the BSE or the documentation required by BSE to have that certification accepted. But we say we cannot do that certification in general, because you have to certify a concrete implementation only at that customer with his retained IT team, for example, because it's not only about the cloud applications that you run, it's also about your own processes and structures as the one who ordered that IT infrastructure. So I think that makes that's sort of an obstacle to your one-click, it's secure now.
Well, this is, I see B2B, this problem of this infrastructure, but if I would say, for example, my fitness trackers, all the data is saved somewhere, or I have an Apple Watch, someone in iCloud. I know how to handle this. I have a risk managers to say what data do I allow to go to the cloud and what not. But actually, I would be very good to have a cloud here, for example, at the Telekom. They would provide something so that all my medical fitness data and whatever, insurance data, maybe insurance says if you do a lot of exercises, then you get better assurance possibilities, that this is saved somewhere here, not in an Amazon cloud or an Apple cloud. So what is Telekom doing here? I'm getting provoked.
For all those, we have some, how to put that in English? In German there's a saying, it means aus der Not eine Tugend machen. So as we are required by our concern to put a lot of emphasis on data privacy, all products that we offer have to pass some internal certification
You don't have a cloud.
So
you're providing an own cloud?
Yeah, but that's for different reasons. So we have not addressed the patient medical record, for example, for the time being. But for example, when it comes to the German Gesundheitskarte, health insurance card, I mean that seal more or less comes automatically with it, right? Because you have to say, okay, here is our solution, please certify it. And that's being done in the moment.
Okay, I know what's going on in the federal area, so I'm a little bit not so positive. Anyway, we have come to the conclusion. I think I would like now final statements. What have we learned from this to our discussion? Do we have had we learned something?
Yeah, so if we want something, it's a very complex area. We have to have some regulations as well as some literacy, and I think things should be easy as possible, but not easier.
I found that we were pretty unison in the, how do you say, not qualification, Einschätzung, whatever. We came to the conclusion that it's about awareness, about training. A lot depends on the single person. It's not just the IT department, but the overall consumer patient. There needs to be more education, and it needs to be, as you said, made easier. Thank you.
Yeah, not much to add. As you mentioned, wasn't much of a dispute here. I think, like always in IT, it's people business. It's not about hardware or software in the first place, but it's about people first, be it about their awareness, be it about their digital literacy, as you called it, be it about the know-how, how attacks or counter tools work. So I think one of the key things here would be that both digitalization and security are more or less leadership issues, because somebody has to take care of them.
Yeah, I think there are enough measures known to to highly secure the applications. They are not used yet. We talked about that due to educational problems and other problems. And I think, well, if the society would want that, they could say, oh, we need certificates on that. And but they don't do that, so that's fine, because probably they think the risk is not so high as for electronic consumer products, where you have to have a seal. So that's okay, but I still think certificates is a good way to make sure to consumers that a product is good, even on safety and security measures.
I think this was a very brilliant sum up of our discussion. I would just end with statements from the CIO, Ralf Schneider from Allianz. He said, if there is attack, it's real time, and then hopefully you have good people to know how to deal with this on the other side. And on the other point, I think innovation and security, developing good products, could be also what we should address in Europe also. Thank you very much, and have a good time. Thank you.